91 seconds. That is how long it took Mike Tyson to knock out Michael Spinks in 1988, a man who had never once been put on the canvas in his professional career. The ringside commentators had nothing to say. Spinks's corner never had time to react. At that moment, Tyson was not simply the heavyweight champion of the world. He was, by any reasonable measure, the most physically dominant prize fighter alive. Opponents said so publicly. The record supported it. 4 years later, he was in a federal prison. 15 years after that, he was bankrupt. The Standard account attributes his decline to personal failure, instability, excess, poor decisions. That account is incomplete. What the record shows, when examined in full, is a man who was systematically failed by nearly every person placed in a position of responsibility over his life and career. Mike Tyson was born in 1966 and grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. His father was absent. His mother, Lorna, raised him alone in poverty while managing her own deteriorating health. Tyson was slight as a child, soft-spoken, and had a pronounced lisp. He was a frequent target for older kids in the neighborhood. By the time he was 12, he had been arrested 38 times. He was remanded to the Tryon School for Boys, a juvenile correctional facility in upstate New York. A staff counselor there named Bobby Stewart, a former amateur boxer, began working with him. Stewart recognized something in the teenager, not just aggression, but a capacity for structure when given a purpose. He contacted Constantine D'Amato. Cus D'Amato was, by the mid-1970s, one of the most respected figures in American boxing. He had trained Floyd Patterson to become the first man to reclaim the heavyweight title. He had worked with Jose Torres, a world light heavyweight champion. D'Amato had spent decades studying the mental architecture of combat sports and had built a defensive system, the peekaboo style, specifically designed for shorter, explosive fighters. When D'Amato watched a 14-year-old Tyson spar for the first time, he told the people in the room that he was looking at the next heavyweight champion of the world. D'Amato took Tyson into his home in Catskill, New York. After Lorna Tyson died in 1982, he formally adopted him and became his legal guardian. The relationship was, by all accounts, the most stabilizing one of Tyson's life. D'Amato served as trainer, father figure, and the primary architect of Tyson's development as a fighter. The peekaboo system suited Tyson's frame precisely. It emphasized tight guard positioning, constant head movement, and short, devastating power punches thrown from inside an opponent's reach. D'Amato did not simply train Tyson to hit hard. He trained him to enter a fight having already won the psychological contest. Tyson won the Junior Olympic Championship, turned professional at 18, and began dismantling opponents in the first round. Nothing in the sport's recent history had looked quite like it. In November 1985, Cus D'Amato died of pneumonia at 77. Tyson was 19 years old. Following D'Amato's death, Tyson's professional affairs were managed by Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton, two promoters who had maintained D'Amato's approach and, by the assessment of people close to the sport, genuinely prioritized Tyson's long-term interests. Under their management, Tyson won the WBC heavyweight title in 1986 at 20 years old, followed by the WBA and IBF titles. He became undisputed heavyweight champion, the youngest in history. In March 1988, Jim Jacobs died of leukemia. Don King moved in within the year. King had been convicted of manslaughter in 1967 and had served time in prison. By the late 1980s, he was the most powerful promoter in boxing, and multiple fighters, including Muhammad Ali, had accused him of financial fraud over the course of his career. Tyson, at this point, was newly married to actress Robin Givens, in a relationship that several people close to him have since described as psychologically damaging. He was surrounded by associates who offered little professional guidance and considerable financial exposure. King exploited this opening. He persuaded Tyson to end his professional relationship with Bill Caton, the last experienced voice of continuity in his corner, and sign with him instead. Tyson earned an estimated $300 million over the course of his career. In August 2003, he filed for bankruptcy. King's promotional agreements were structured so that substantial portions of Tyson's fight revenue flowed back into King-controlled companies. Tyson eventually sued King for $100 million. The case settled for a reported $14 million. The forensic audit of Tyson's finances uncovered that more than $4 million had been removed from his accounts by people working directly within his organization. On July 19, 1991, Tyson was in Indianapolis for a Black Expo event. That night, at the Canterbury Hotel, a woman named Desiree Washington accused him of rape. Tyson denied the accusation. He has maintained that denial in every subsequent account. Regardless of any assessment of the legal outcome, what the circumstances made plain was the degree to which Tyson was, at that moment, professionally unprotected. There was no manager present. There was no security infrastructure managing his exposure. For a man of his public profile and financial standing, the absence of even basic risk management was a structural failure on the part of everyone drawing a salary from his career. He was convicted in February 1992 and sentenced to 6 years. He served 3. He entered prison as the undisputed heavyweight champion. He left it pursuing a version of himself that the intervening years had made unrecoverable. 3 years away from training does not simply pause an athlete's development. In the specific case of the peekaboo system, which relied on finely conditioned reflexes, head movement timing, weight transfer, spatial reading, the deterioration was significant and structural. These are skills that require sustained, high-level repetition to maintain. They cannot be reconstructed quickly. Tyson's return fight in 1995, a first-round knockout of Peter McNeely, was widely treated as confirmation that he had returned to form. He had not. The raw power remained. The tactical architecture D'Amato had installed did not. Evander Holyfield demonstrated this in November 1996. Holyfield, who had been knocked down by a journeyman fighter earlier in his career, walked through Tyson's punches with relative consistency and stopped him in the 11th round. In the rematch the following year, Tyson bit off a portion of Holyfield's ear and was disqualified. That image, replayed countless times in the decades since, effectively became the defining visual of a career that had begun with something entirely different. Tyson's peak years as a fighter, by any technical assessment, ran roughly from age 20 to 23. During that period, he was the undisputed heavyweight champion, undefeated, and in possession of one of the most precisely engineered fighting styles in the sport's history. In the 4 years that followed, the following occurred in sequence. The two men most responsible for his professional welfare both died. A third party with a documented history of financial misconduct assumed control of his earnings. His personal circumstances became destabilizing. He was left without adequate supervision during a situation that resulted in criminal prosecution, and he was incarcerated for 3 years at the center of his athletic prime. The fighter who lost to Holyfield in 1996 was not the fighter who fought Spinks in 1988. The degradation of his ability was not primarily a consequence of his own choices. It was the predictable result of years of institutional negligence and deliberate exploitation. Mike Tyson is today, in his late 50s, a widely respected public figure, recognized for his candor, his self-awareness, and his willingness to speak without sentimentality about what his life has been. The financial and institutional record of his career tells a story that public commentary has rarely framed directly. The people responsible for managing his affairs, with few exceptions, extracted what they could and left him exposed. The men who genuinely protected him died early. The men who replaced them did not. $300 million earned. Bankruptcy by 50. 3 years in prison during the years when his career should have been at its height. The most dominant heavyweight of his generation did not decline because he lacked discipline or character. He declined because the people around him made certain, whether by intention or negligence, that he would.